Well, hello, AuthorNation, and welcome to the Week 1 recap of the After Party. My name is Joe Solari. I'm the Managing Director of AuthorNation, and I'm here to give you some context around what we're doing with the After Party and give you the highlight reel for Week 1. So let's start out with what is the After Party and who's included in the After Party. The after party is our response to how do we digest and get the most out of all of these amazing sessions, when the reality is, if you were an attendee at the show, the best you could do is see about 25% of the sessions. So if you were an attendee and you want to catch up on the sessions that you chose to not go to because you picked another session, or you're too busy talking shop and doing deals that you missed most of the sessions, this is your chance to get the most out of that content. If you didn't go to the show and you're a digital ticket buyer, this is where you're going to absorb all of the information. So how do you go about doing this? First off, you go to community.authornation.live. In there, you'll see the learning section and the Video Vault 2024. If you're a live attendee to 2024, or you bought the digital ticket, you will have access to that space and you'll be able to see the full videos. In each video, we have the session video. We have the audio that you can download. So if you want to listen to the audio, you can. We also have transcripts and copies of the slides. You will also find links to where you can ask questions and where you can sign up for the next webinar. So what you're going to see in a moment is the past sessions we've done this week, but there are more than 100 sessions we still have to go through. These sessions roll all the way into March. So if you see something that you like from this week, then go in and digest the full information. But more importantly, go in and see what's upcoming for next week and future weeks. Watch those videos ahead of time. Sign up for those Q&A sessions and ask some questions so that you can get your questions answered by the presenter. Each session you'll see has got a moderator and a presenter, and any questions that are asked ahead of time, that presenter will have some time to be thoughtful in coming up with their answers, and we'll address those questions during the session. So with that being said, let's get into this week's highlight reel.
And going to events is included in direct sales. Okay, so this one's tricky. Box sets, collections, and bundles. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges for independent authors is we haven't figured out, I don't know that anyone's figured out how to do a print box set and make it make financial sense. So if you wanted to sell a box set and I looked into it, you would have to create the box, fold up the box, put all your books in it, shrink wrap it, send it to Amazon, and be a third-party reseller. And then your readers want a discount. And I did all the math, and there's no money left for you. So that gets to be the traditional publishers can have the stronghold on that. So what I did instead is I just tie my books in a bow and sell it on my website as a bundle. Or, now here's the other challenge. So my website is US only because shipping books internationally, books are heavy, and shipping the books internationally, that 8-book set is $100 to ship internationally, and the whole set itself is $90. So it makes no sense. So I did the collection, and a lot of middle grade authors have done this, where it's one big giant book with 3 books inside one cover. So that's what this one is it's a collection. So all the books in one book.
Yes, I have an email list. So my email list is about 1,200. And it's, the other thing with middle grade is it has attrition. So it's been 1,200 for years, like 6 years. And I feel like fantasy, other authors, you have a reader and they stay a reader for 20 years. I have a reader and they're my reader for 3 years. And then they move on and then I get a new reader. So I would say don't get discouraged in middle grade if your email list isn't growing. It's just changing and you're still getting sales. It's just you've had readers and families outgrow your brand and you have to bring in new ones.
Diana wants to know if you keep your protagonists the same age or do they grow as the books go along?
They age. And as they age, the reading level gets harder, which the parents love because what happens is that if the kids get hooked on the series, they will read up. And that's also why I've erred on the side of not being gritty, because they get hooked on the characters and they will read them faster than they themselves are growing. And so then they read up.
You have. When I look at a blank page, I have the same fear when I have to start a new story and I don't know where I'm going. But more importantly, I have the mindset of a self-published author. And this is where scenes cause problems. Because there's two types of self-published author. Make a noise if you class yourself as one of these, an author who also publishes their own work. Yeah? I didn't make a noise, because in my mind, I am a publisher who also writes books. And this is my main take. If there's anything you can take of this, and be aware, we're already 10 minutes into the talk and I haven't started yet. Be aware that the reason I look at that is because as a publisher who writes books, I have to cover everything. When you are a self-published author, you are not just the writer. You will do the covers. You will do the editing or outsource the editing. You will do the marketing, the adverts, the page that goes on Amazon itself, writing the blurb. In fact, this is a book I've got coming out next year. You can see here, there's about 25 things on my Notion list that must be ticked off for that book to come off. One of them is write the book.
POVs. The scene needs to be the best scene that makes the most effective perspective for that scene. If you are following a particular character, their POV is the most effective scene. At the same time, if you need to get something out there to the reader that doesn't necessarily have to be shown to the characters, well, that's when you can start playing with it and you can start having fun. I mean, I've yet to do it from the perspective of one of the dogs in the books, but I'm tempted to do it in one of the chapters. But I've had characters who are actively against each other, but are publicly okay with each other. And then when you go into their chapters, you realize just how much they absolutely hate each other. And how one of them is being forced to do something. One of them is being forced by a bad guy to inform on the team. And you are literally watching a scene where everyone's all happy and everything's great. And then the very next scene, you're realizing he's walked out of that room, walked down the road, gone into a car and told them everything. And it's such a, whoa, hang on a second, what the hell? You know, and again, that ends a chapter, because then people are like, well, hang on a second, I need to know more. By flipping the POV, I find that makes it more satisfying for me than it is to just have one scene from one POV. But at the same time, you can do many variations. If you've got two people being interviewed by three coppers, that's 5 POVs. And I mean, there's a great movie with Nick Cage, and I can't remember the name of it. It's got, I think, a very young Joaquin Phoenix is in it, and it's a fight. And it's the same fight from like 5 people's perspectives. And that's a great film to watch if you want to learn about POVs, because every single one shows that what you thought was happening is not what actually happened. And if you can do that,
romance novels under the pen name Stephanie Holmes. I have been self-publishing romance since 2015. I started with approximately 6 to 8 books a year, and I now do about 3 books a year. In 2018, I gave myself the best birthday present ever, and I quit my day job. In 2019, I had my very first book release into the top 20 on Amazon's Kindle store. And although we've got a couple of months left of the year, it is looking pretty positive that I will get to celebrate a very special milestone in 2024, which is this one. Now, these numbers are in New Zealand dollars, as you might be able to tell by the accent. And $1 million in New Zealand is around 650,000 US dollars. Now, you can also see that these numbers do not quite add up to $1 million. That is because I had to hand in my slides early, and basically there's still quite a bit of the year left. Before I had written the book, I had this cover made before I had written the book, and I wrote the book in 3 weeks. This thing practically wrote itself. By the end of that 3 weeks, I had 921 pre-orders just off of this blurb. I used a very classic classically horror cliffhanger that romance readers had basically never seen before. And when this book came out, the Facebook exploded with people being like, oh, this cliffhanger is insane. If you had told me that my first bestseller would be a Cthulhu mythos horror bully romance, I would have laughed so hard. But that is literally what happened. This book, this series was such a miracle. It was a right time, right place, right book kind of situation. But it took until book number 33 to have a hit like this. How do you get to book number 33 without having a hit? Well, you have to write 32 not hit books. And then what happens if, like me, you then follow that hit with a complete flop, and then another complete flop? What happens is you do not quit before the miracle.
Pottery shards and ruins and weird old things and museums, and I could still love those things without having to make them like my identity. And I didn't have to have a career in that space to continue to love those things, and that being in that space with these people was going to make me lose my love for those things. And so that was when I had the idea, and my husband helped me have the idea that actually there are other things that I could love. And I decided to pursue the life of being a writer. And so I don't know everything about when to quit and when not to quit. But the one thing I do know from my own experience is that when you feel as though pursuing a thing is destroying your love of something that is intrinsically part of you, then it is definitely time to step back and take a look and say, is this really what I want, or is there another way for me to love this thing that I love without, having to do this thing which is destroying it? Because, we only get one life, and you shouldn't have to spend it doing things that aren't fun or, destroying bits of who you are. And
the reason is Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law tells us that and this is usually for time management, any task is going to take up all the amount of time we give to it. The same thing is true with food on our plate. The same thing is true with money.
So Takiri came back and she says, what kind of account would you recommend for a 6-month emergency fund? A checking account, a low interest credit line, or something else?
6-month emergency fund. I love using high yield savings accounts for these. So I actually have my profit account and my tax account at a separate bank account. One, so that I have to go through an extra step to get to it if I needed to, but two, because Ally Bank has some really good high yield savings accounts. They're technically not business accounts, but that's okay because I'm not touching that money anyway. But I think last time I looked, it was like 3.8% that they were paying, which is lower than what it used to be. It was close to 5% just 6 months ago. But Ally Bank usually consistently has the highest rates without having some surprise low rates in there. So I like high yield savings account for that kind of thing. Let the money work for you.
Small but steady source of cash. I now have 8 Anthony Suspense novels that are available on all the retail platforms. At one time they were 99 cents. At the beginning of this year, I put the price up to $1.99, and I've made over $600 on those, just writing them, putting them up, and not really pushing them much. And I'm going to keep making that little bit of money, that 35 cents or whatever it is, for the rest of my life and beyond, because those are going to keep finding fans, keep finding readers, and keep sending me that small stream of income. So let's talk more about the options for creating income. So standalone ebooks, this is the way that I have monetized, that I've made money from my short fiction. And the nice thing about short fiction is you can leverage all the same indie publishing platforms, tools, services that you can with longer fiction. So how many of you have indie published anything of any length? Okay, so all those things that you have out there, the KDPs and the graphic digitals and the publish drives and the on and on and on, those are all available to you as well when you're publishing short fiction.
like traditional publishing magazines. But, since we're talking about the indie publishing arm, I would definitely say that writing in a world that you've already established is great, or writing in a world you're planning to establish. I thought this was really fun. I brought this book. This is Ben Aronovich. He writes the Rivers of London series, and it's a very fun one. It appeals to me because kind of like the Anne Kinnear stories, it's a world where everything's more or less normal, but he's just tweaked one thing, and the one thing he's tweaked is that there's a division of the London police force that is focused on investigating like paranormal crime. And pardon me, he has these. He actually explicitly says, so for example, he has a short story called The Home Crowd Advantage. And he said, notationally set between Rivers of London and Moon over Soho. So those are two of his novels. So he's being very explicit about, like, if you're reading these in order, then the events of this story take place between these two novels, which I think is fun. And then he also, for each of his short stories, has a little introduction to the short story, which I would definitely do when I put out the Year of Kinnear collection. And I think that can be really fun because it gives your reader an even deeper connection with you.
Profits. Again, potential. Not every rapid release author makes breakout profits, but it is more likely on that side. I'm just being honest, it's not all sunshine and roses, pretty far from it. However, the artisan author is quality focused rather than quantity. It's author-centric, and what that means is that to a greater degree than the rapid release author, people tend to form loyalty to an individual author rather than just this particular book. You will get fewer readers, but they will be less price sensitive. And if I'm going to make a value judgment, which you probably shouldn't, I would say they're better readers, okay? That's just my opinion. Discovery happens through word of mouth rather than by algorithms. You'll also get algorithmic discovery, but artisan authordom tends to be fan to fan, which is what we're going to spend a lot of this time talking about. You want to be wide in this approach. You could do Kindle Unlimited, but why rob yourself of a tool when you're trying to be an artist and you have many more avenues outside of it? You can do ebooks, but you can also do special editions, print, all sorts of special things like that.
Back to the people who aren't me. But I will say one of the things that was a challenge there, and anybody who takes that wider like bargain or KU sort of an approach is going to run into this. And that's that a lot of those people who want to buy the 99-cent BookBub deal that they saw are not going to want to get a fancy edition Kickstarter gold leaf paperback. It's just not going to happen. And that's been something that I've kind of run into, is having a lot of readers who, oh, if I run a deal and it's really cheap, I can get them to buy it, but I don't want to sell my books really cheap. I want to sell better and more expensive books. And that is, it's just like a second level sifting. It's just understanding that, if you have 100 casual fans who like your books, but they bought them cheap, you're going to get one or two who are going to come along with the ride. It's just so manual. So in answer to the question, you could do it at any point because it is a one-by-one sort of a thing. If I were brand new and I were doing this, and if I opted for an initial 90-day thing, but I knew that I wanted to be more of an artisan author, then I would only do it once. Like I would only do the KU once, and I would say after 90 days, then I'm going to go ahead and try to move in that direction. But I don't think there's a pat answer for anybody. It's kind of like I would do it as early as I personally could and just understand that it is a slow process.